So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate your time this afternoon. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jane Shaw. I'm the co-founder and executive chair of BCAL Diagnostics. And unfortunately, I've worked within the breast cancer field for about the last 30 years. So BDX was developed to design a new diagnostic tool to detect breast cancer. We listed on the ASX in 2023, and these are our current company metrics. So BCAL, what have we done? It's taken 14 years, since 2010, to develop the test, which we're about to launch in the market later this year. We've got about 5,000 prospective blood samples that we've collected within Australia, North America, and also Eastern Europe. And it's been 14 years in the making, but we're finally going to launch later this year in Sydney. The test will be introduced as an adjunct test to a mammogram, which is really important, which we'll talk about shortly. We've got a highly experienced, dedicated team who've basically taken about 70 to 80 molecular tests globally, which is quite unique in terms of our team. The breast test is a game-changing technology. It's going to lead to improved survivability rates for all women everywhere. If you are diagnosed with breast cancer, if you're diagnosed stage 0 to 1, you've got a 98% survival rate. Unfortunately, if it's stage 3 or 4, the rate is about 28%. So early diagnosis is the key to improved detection of all cancers. The company is quite unique in terms of the development that we've worked with clinicians over the period of time. And I'm actually going to hand over now to Dr. David Speakman. He was the medical director at the Peter Mac Centre in Melbourne, one of the leading cancer research institutes. And we're working with over 50 clinicians, oncologists, breast surgeons who work with breast cancer every day. And I can't put into context why we need this test better than him. Click it again.
My name's Dr. David Speakman, and I'm a breast surgeon. I spend most of my time in operating theatres like this, removing breast cancers. In my clinic every day, 5 or 10 women will ask me, when are we going to get something better than a mammogram? I can't stand having my breasts tortured by being clamped in that machine. There must be a better way. It looks like that way is now here with the BCAL breast test. This simple blood test, just like a cholesterol check, can tell women whether there's any sign of active breast cancer or whether they're safe and there's no sign of cancer. I can't stress to you enough how keen the breast cancer community, the doctors, nurses and specialists involved in looking after these women, are keen to detect breast cancer as early as possible because that gives us the greatest chance of saving lives. I'm proud to be part of a group of breast cancer clinicians in Australia who are helping BCAL develop this test. We see every day the tragedy of breast cancer when it occurs and is detected too late. We know that anything we can do to detect breast cancer earlier, to rule it in or out for any individual woman, is a vital step forward in saving more lives from breast cancer. For that reason, the doctors and specialists and nurses who work in the breast area in Australia are very keen to see tests like this become available as soon as possible.
So the commercial pathway and the product to market, it's going to be clinically led with the clinicians, which is very important. The scientific evidence and clinical data we have has met the criteria that many of the leading clinicians in Australia are working with us on. So the commercial launch is going to be in multidisciplinary breast cancer clinics, initially in Sydney and Melbourne later this year. We're then going to scale the test nationally in Australia. We're also currently working with a parallel pathway into the US market, and then we'll take it to the rest of the world. So at the moment in Australia, there's about 2.1 million mammograms a year. Breast cancer affects 1 in 7 women here, and many of us in this room will have been affected directly or indirectly with breast cancer. In the US, it's about 1 in 8 women, and there's about 52.3 mammograms. However, because of the process of having a mammogram, and if you're not familiar with it, it's basically 2 metal plates with the breasts compressed in a very uncomfortable position. So therefore, about 50% of the women eligible for a mammogram actually don't have any procedures. And basically, it's for pain, cultural, ethnic accessibility. So we are launching the test as an adjunct test to a mammogram. And this is really important because a mammogram has actually been the standard of care for breast cancer diagnosis for the last 30 years. If you introduce a test to the market and tell the doctors or work with the doctors and say you're going to replace the standard of care, you're actually fooling yourself. So at the moment, a mammogram is available to women from 40 to 75 in Australia. Still, women under 40, the number one diagnostic tool is still your hand, which is really disappointing. So our first market entry is alongside a mammogram. Second will be for women under 40. And the third product will be for ongoing monitoring of women who've actually had breast cancer and want to know that it's not returned. There's a high incidence of reoccurrence within the first 5 years, and there's actually no monitoring tool for that at this time. So as I said, at the moment, we have a national breast cancer screening program that's state-specific, and all our doctors that work with us are involved in the Australian breast cancer screening program. Currently, when you go through breast screen, you have a 2D mammogram. If you go to a multidisciplinary centre, you'll have a mammogram and an ultrasound. You can have a 3D mammogram with a contrast mammogram. So there are a range of diagnostic tools. So our blood test is going to be alongside a mammogram. And we've been working with general practitioners as well at this time. And for those women that choose not to have a mammogram or any other intervention, the breast test will be the only test that they will adopt at this time. So the test. It's a simple blood test. It's a standard blood draw. We're positioning the test about $300 out of pocket. It's $300 out of pocket for a contrast mammogram, which is a far more invasive procedure. We've got extensive data and scientific presentations that we can forward to you if you're of interest. But basically, our science is based on lipids. So lipids are basically fats in the blood system. And when the cells are deregulated from normal cells into cancer, the first thing those cells need is actually fats or energy to convert into cancer cells. So our platform, which has been developed over many years, basically can identify breast cancer and non-breast cancer patients with a 90% sensitivity and an 85% specificity. Now that is their material results. They've been replicated in Australia and the US across different platforms, and that's why the clinicians are so excited to work with us. In terms of our commercial launch, it's been a long time coming. We'll have first revenues at the end of this year. We have our own laboratory in North Ryde with the mass spec technology. So the key milestones for us are the validation process, which we're going through at this time. It will be NATA accreditation, which is key, because we can start generating revenue once we've gone through the NATA accreditation process. We're launching through an in-house laboratory developed test. We're also working with our clinicians in terms of published papers. We presented at all the international ASCO and San Antonio Breast Cancer Conference. We're currently in discussions now with some commercial partners and other radiology providers, and we'll be making announcements in the weeks and months to come. But basically, we are on track to generating revenue. So in terms of our commercialisation launch, we are collecting now samples every day in about 15 centres, leading multidisciplinary and cancer care centres. So Sydney Breast Clinic has been collecting samples for the last 4 years. We have 2 runs that go to our laboratory now every day. So women are used to having a blood sample and a mammogram. And at the end of this year, we're just going to switch that out where we'll be where we'll be able to charge revenue for the test, and there's a great need for that. We're also collecting samples in India because we need the ethnic diversity, and we also need the volumes and the diversity of the samples. Very large market. And we've been working with a laboratory partner called Pression, which some of you are aware of, and we've replicated the science, the lipidomic platform, and we're now actively collecting current samples over there and working with some of the leading clinicians in the US in terms of breast surgeons. So we know what our commercial pathway is going to look like, and we know who the actual partners are. In terms of clinicians, David Speakman you've met, medical director. We've got Professor Bruce Mann, probably leading researcher in breast cancer. Professor Bruce Mann and Dr. Mary Rickard actually introduced mammography screening to Australia and to some other international markets. They're globally renowned. Associate Professor Gillian Lamoury, she's a breast cancer oncology, and she's leading our clinical protocols and guidance in India at this time. We've actually got over probably 50 or 60 lead clinicians working with us across oncology, surgery, radiology, and primary care. As we discussed earlier, IP and protection of IP is extremely important. So we've got license agreements for breast and lung. We've got a whole range of patents here dating back to 2011. We continue to build them around the science, the clinical data, and the actual know-how in terms of the lipidomic platform. We continue to build on that all the time. So any organisation, you can have the great science, but it's down to the people and the execution. I'm the co-founder with Ron Phillips, who's the ex-Minister for Health. We've owned Sydney Breast Clinic, or did own it for the last 20, 25 years. Some of you might know Mark Burrows and Jonathan Trollope. Dr. John Horrell was our CEO up until the 2nd of April. He's ex-Quest Diagnostics. He's taken about 70 to 80 molecular tests to market. And our recent new board member is David Darling, who basically was the CEO for Pacific Edge for 17 years and took a diagnostic test to market in New Zealand and the US. So we've got a great board, governance, practical with experience. And then our management team, we've got Shane Ryan, CEO. He basically delivered a diagnostic test for breast cancer screening within the last 2 years in the Australian market, globally renowned as well. Good science, and we've got a lot of experience of people who've actually executed and delivered before. So in summary, I know it's 10 minutes, so we've got great science, we've got great data. It's been a long time in the making, but that comes down to the quality of the science and the evidence behind it. And we've got the clinicians working with us to take this test to market, and hopefully we'll be improving women's survivability rates later this year. So thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity.